Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Dean, you've been buying rental properties for a long time, for 24 years. And over that period, you've made a lot of mistakes. You've seen a lot of other investors make a lot of mistakes. What do you think the biggest mistake is that you've seen investors make?
Well, Dan, I think two things is number one, not defining what their end objective is. And then the second one is that they kind of just get their feet wet, dabbling in it, and not really having a true plan in where they want to go.
Dean's not perfect. He's made a lot of mistakes himself over the years, but he's learned from them and he's come up with 7 laws to make money with his rental properties. They're basically the principles that he follows to be a successful rental property investor. And on the show today, he's going to share them with us. Joining us on the show today from Indiana is Dean Savarino. We'll take a really quick break. We'll come right back and we'll meet Dean. The first step in buying a rental property is to get pre-qualified. And I would suggest you work with a lender that specializes in working with investors, because the last thing you want to have happen is to get to closing and find out the money's not there and you can't close. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender and she'll pre-qualify you for free if you mention Rental Income Podcast. Find out more today. Contact Chaley at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. Dean, your first law is that you think people need to reverse engineer where they're trying to go. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So, most people get into real estate for the purpose of passive income, and it's definitely not a get rich overnight type of scheme. So instead of dabbling in it, you want to really have a reverse type of engineering. And I've done this in my other businesses where you put a dollar amount on what do you need to make yourself successful, or at least what kind of dollars do you want to achieve per month, let's say. So let's say you're starting with a very conservative growth of, let's do around $2,000 a month. So you want to generate at least a $24,000 cash flow per year. So what does that mean in acquisitions? What does that mean on how many properties do you need to purchase? Everybody says, well, doors. How many doors do you need? Average is around $100, $150. So real quickly, you're able to kind of establish that. And that's where you start to sit down and go, okay, am I dabbling in this? Do I just want to buy a one house, or do I want to buy 4 homes? But how can you make X dollars passively? And it's a building. Are you going to go out and buy, 20 units all at once? Maybe, maybe not. But let's put an end goal, whereas this is our reverse engineering. We want to make $24,000 a year. What is that going to take? And put a defined plan and write those goals down and work on your goals. I've always done goals 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And you could do this with anything, whether it's going to be in health, you want to start exercising. And you have to start off with the baby steps and achieve those little goals and successes in your life. And now you're able to move on to the next level and the next level and the next level. And you start building that momentum. But if someone just goes out there without any goal and hopefully I'm going to make it, then you're kind of really selling yourself a little short.
Sure.
The analogy I've always used with everything in life is, if I'm in the Midwest, I'm close to Chicago. And if I told you, hey, Dan, I need you to go out to Sacramento, California, and I just point in a direction, you're going to go west. That's it. Well, how are you going to get there? You're going to go west, but you need to have these small checkpoints. Your overall goal is Sacramento. Your overall goal is to generate $24,000 a year. What are the checkpoints along the way? Same thing with anything in life. You have to have that end result, and you have to keep yourself in line and creating those little successes along the way. It just gives you that self-esteem boost that, hey, I could do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you get to $24,000 a year, and then once you get there, you can then set the next goal that, all right, maybe I want to double that now. What do I have to do to double that or triple that? I think that makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
Okay, so number two is a mistake that you've seen people make where they actually buy too many rentals, and you actually made this mistake at one point. Talk me through the mistake of buying too many rentals.
You definitely don't want to bite off more than you could chew because it's going to hurt you. But you want to develop a team around you. And when I say team, it's not necessarily your employees, but the team of professionals, your attorneys, a good CPA understanding it, properly putting your properties in LLCs, accounting firms. I have a friend of mine. He's acquired a lot of properties, and boy, you should use QuickBooks. It's not to the point that, man, he's got a lot that he really needs this, but establishing these small little programs in place to help you grow and not stumble. That's so important.
Sure.
We all learn by mistakes, and I want to tell your listeners, you're going to make mistakes. It's inevitable, but to learn from those mistakes and what are your weaknesses, and really almost do a little bit of a self-awareness on, hey, this is what I need to do because I'm not good at doing this. Let me find somebody who could help me on that. And of course, not growing too quickly, but sustainable, right? That's what you want to do.
Right. Okay. So number three is that we all want to save money. We all want to do things cheaply, but you think it's important to not get too caught up in that. You don't want to nickel and dime too much over repairs and upgrades. Tell me about that. You've gotten burned by using the cheapest guy out there in the past. Talk me through that.
Well, okay. So I have a ton of stories on that, but when you're starting off, obviously you might not know how to do everything in remodeling or taking care of it yourself, and you're learning and you're hoping that you're going to get some guidance. And when I was starting off, we didn't have the internet. Now you could Google anybody or anything. You're going to find out, what kind of reviews they have. But, the cheapest is definitely not the best. And more importantly, especially when you're dealing with rentals, you really want to have somebody who's licensed and bonded in that municipality. I can't tell you enough, because if this guy screws up, what's your recourse going after this guy? And I'm not telling you about, hey, I got a leaky sink. It's when you're doing a little bit more larger renovations. Roofing is one of the things I've seen people definitely get burned by. There's a reason that the guy might be 40% cheaper, and that typically is because they're not licensed or bonded and insured. And God forbid if this guy falls off the roof, who he's going to sue? He's going to sue you.
Right.
And who's going to win? He's going to win. So, the old adage is, you do get what you pay for. I own a landscape company in the Midwest, and we're definitely not the cheapest, but by far we excel at what we do, and we always give our clients more than what they're paying for. And that's where, the difference is. I'm willing to pay you more money, but I want it done properly. And I have vendors now, I'll call up my heating and cooling guy, great guy. He's not necessarily the cheapest, but when I call, he jumps and he takes care of what I need. And that is what you get. I don't want the cheapest guy that I don't know if he's going to be there in business next week. Let me pay you a little bit more, but I'm going to demand a lot more from you. And when you send me an invoice, I'm going to pay it quickly. And over the years, I have some great relationships with some vendors that, I had a heating and cooling replacement. $26,000 is what the bill was. And I talked to him. I'm like, hey, Todd, I do have the money to pay him immediately, but I said, hey, can you break that down in 4 payments for me? He said, yeah, Dean, no problem at all. And that's a relationship that you build. You help him. He helps me. If I had to put that on a credit card, I'm going to pay X amount of interest rates. But he knows I don't question his invoices. I know he's going to take care of me. But that's a relationship that you build. And relationships are extremely important as you continue to grow and move forward. I can't express that enough. So the cheapest is not the best. And I would almost ask that you question it at some point. Is this individual going to do a good job? Is he going to be around? if he does screw up on your property, especially let's say with the electrical, boy, if you get an electrician over there rewiring your house, doing something, and he's doing it on the side, it burns down, you're going to get burned on this,
Right. Right.
and avoid it. Build a good group of individuals around you, and this relates to the team, right? I don't want to keep shopping for the next cheapest guy. I don't want to go through, this guy. I had a $150 invoice from this guy, and he's going to beat him, or what? It's too time consuming for me. And there comes to a point when you do grow, it's like, what is your time worth?
Right.
Is your time worth, chasing this cheap guy? Or I would much rather talk to a potential seller or looking for a new property or working on my other businesses that I can make, $500 more than trying to save $50.
Sure.
Don't stop to pick up the nickels when there's dollars in front of you.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. I think that's right on. All right, number 4 is if you lose money, don't give up. You've lost money on deals and it hasn't deterred you. Walk me through why that's so important to not give up if you get into a bad deal.
I had a 6-unit, was my first building that I purchased. And the taxes back then were $995 a year. Super cheap. They bumped up to maybe about $1,000. And then our area, they did a reassessment. There was people in the South County who said, hey, these guys up north are paying way too cheap. All of a sudden, this property's taxes went from $1,000 a year to, it was like $15,000 a year, and all my other properties. So I was in a massive, massive negative. And I paid the taxes for about 2 years, but at this point, there's no cash flow. I'm negative. And in order to get this off of my plate, I think I was paying about $46,000 a year, which in some areas it's normal. In this area, it was not able to sustain itself. I took a massive loss. I sold these properties for cheap and got rid of them. And it's almost to the point of, you're pulling off the Band-Aid quick or slowly. And my thought was, hey, I'm losing money. Let's cut the losses. And I was sad. It was very bad. And I stayed out of the market for about 2 years until things settled down. And then I went back in. And I have to tell you, it's been the best thing that I've done. I learned a great deal about that. And it just added to my knowledge of going, hey, listen, let me maybe not go in some of these areas. Let's, in our area now, what they did, they put a 2% cap and a 3% cap that your taxes can never go higher than that, because the whole area was just slapped very hard with new assessments. So don't give up. In anything in business or anything that you do, if you persevere, eventually, the odds are it's going to be a lot better.
Yep.
But the people who just go, boy, I had a really bad deal with this property or a bad tenant, forget about it. Maybe it's not cut out for you, right?
Yep.
Nothing's always going to be easy.
Yeah. All right. Number 5 is don't listen to other people. When you were starting out, someone told you that you would never make it in rentals. So talk me through that, like why you really just need to be focused on your goal and what you want to accomplish and don't let other people talk you out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was in my early 20s and my loved ones, my mom and my dad, they would cut out articles and, look at what was going on in this area. You're going to lose money, anything. And they love you, right? They don't want to see you suffer. Your friends, your family, they're saying, gosh, don't do this. A friend of mine really failed. And everybody's going to put these scare tactics in there. And I have to tell you, I appreciated it and I listened to them, but I didn't stop, right? And when I first started, I had to buy properties in C areas, C properties. And they were, a little bit run down. This is what I was able to get into. I paid my dues. I learned a lot. And it wasn't easy. Mom and dad and friends and family, they were right. It was tough. But I guess I'm too stubborn to just stop. And I'm happy I did it.
Yeah.
I'm successful now because I heard what they said. I didn't argue with them, but I still moved in the direction what I was supposed to go.
Number 6, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but A big part of your success has been talking to everybody, and you never know where you're going to find a deal. And you found a lot of synergy with your landscaping business and using that to find deals that you ended up buying. So talk me through why it's so important to just talk to everybody you meet.
Everybody, every single person, they always say, this is a small world, and it truthfully is. I cannot tell you how many people with my landscaping business that I've met, and 2, 3 years later, there's an opportunity. It doesn't mean that you're going to gain an opportunity in that instance, or that you're actually looking for an opportunity. Sometimes they come to you for help, or it's a mutual type. But I've managed properties, meaning that we've maintained them. Later on, I ended up purchasing them. And just putting it in there. And in fact, yesterday I met with a client. They're from California. They flew in to see this property that they have here. It's got a mattress firm, and I think it has a optical store in there. And we've been doing the snow removal and mowing. And I told him, he's like, he's the property manager for the new owners. And I said, hey, so what's their deal? He goes, they might want to sell it. I said, you know what? If they do, I said, would you please talk to me first, and we could work something out? He's like, absolutely, they would love to do that. That might come, that might happen. It might pass. Who knows? But I'm going to stay on it. I made a note when I came back, and I have it actually. I have an email system that I could send an email, a reminder 3 months later, in January or February, to email him and go, hey, just want to see, what's the owner's stance. And that's what you build up your relationships, and more importantly, the opportunities. Because a lot of times, some of the properties that are on the market are maybe not the best deal. So if you could find properties off the market, it's a lot better,
Sure.
frankly. So
Sure.
you get a better investment, and they're not having to potentially put it to market and pay a commission to a realtor, let's say, and you could really negotiate a lot better one-on-one, especially if they know you, they like you, they have confidence in you.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Sure.
important.
Sure. Now, the last point here is that we're all doing this to make money, but you think that getting knowledge is actually more important than getting money. Talk me through that.
With what's happening today, that you could go online and find absolutely anything that you want. You could go on YouTube. You could listen to podcasts such as yours, which I think, I've learned a lot, even though I think, I know everything, but there's these little tidbits. And when I was starting out, I would consume every single book I could read, every single one. One of the first ones that, most people have read is, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Great book. A lot of interest in there. The Millionaire Next Door was another one that I read, and it was great. And then as I progressed, there was a book by the Rich Dad group that was Loopholes of Real Estate, and learning about, what's accelerated depreciation, what ways can you maintain properties and keep the growth going, or just looking at, you find the ugliest house or property in the neighborhood. That's what you want to do. So really educating yourself is important, but I want to caution though, you don't want to be so far off that you don't have confidence in yourself in going out there and acquiring a property. Don't go out and buy unless you got a lot of experience, go out and buy a 20 unit or a 40 unit. Get your feet wet a little bit and start growing, and you'll learn quickly. But you have to be a sponge. I continue to educate myself every single day, and you're feeding your mind. If you stop, you're going to die. You're not going to grow. And if you could listen to 15, 20 minutes every single day of a podcast, which right now it seems like that's the best thing that you're able to learn while you're driving, or if you're jogging, or if you're working out, put your headphones on and listen and learn. But I think the most important thing for anybody getting into real estate these days is, execute a plan, do the reverse engineering, educate yourself. And one thing that I was told by a mentor of mine, and I know there's a lot of people buy single family homes, which I think is great. But you want to, in order to scale, if you could go out and, you acquire a 4 unit and you're just starting off, you get in there with a 4 unit, you could usually get it with a 3% down with FHA, live in the 1 unit, and then just keep duplicating that, every year, every 2 years, for example. You do that in the next 5 to 7 years, and you have 20 units that you're managing, and now you have a portfolio.
Right.
And it's scalable at that point.
Really good advice. Well, if anybody wants to reach out to Dean, or if you want to look up the books that Dean mentioned a minute ago, I've got links to the books and to his email address on my website. You can find it all at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 289. If Dean inspired you and you're ready to buy your first rental, or you want to add to your portfolio, the lender that I recommend is our sponsor today. It's Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. Chaley is a nationwide lender, and she specializes in helping investors buy rental properties. What's great about Chaley is that she has a ton of different loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to set up a time to talk to Chaley, you can contact her at her website at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE, lendinggroup.com. If you mention Rental Income Podcast, Chaley will waive all the pre-qualification fees. NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We've got new interviews every single Tuesday. Make sure you subscribe and you will get notified as soon as they come out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.